Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the podcast. And today we're talking about one of my favorite / most hated subjects, mold. And the reason we wanted to do this podcast today is and I'm sure you're the same because you're so mold savvy. I am just so gutted every time a client comes to me and I'm looking at their symptoms and I'm like, this smells like mold, looks like mold. And then I ask them about their home and they tell me things and I'm like, those are such obvious red flags. Yeah. But they're obvious to me because I'm a certified mold testing technician. And unless you know what to look for, you will absolutely wander into a place and not realize what you're picking up or, the subtle things are actually telling you this is a really unhealthy home. So that's why I actually have a couple of mini courses, how to inspect a property. There's one if you are looking at a rental because you can't necessarily do too much when you're up against 100 other potential tenants and you don't want to get blacklisted. And there's one that's a little bit different if you're looking to buy. However, we wanted to talk through 5 things that you can do as of right away when you are looking at a property that will help you identify some things that really once you see them, you can't unsee them. So Nat, would you like to share with us step number 1?
Yes. Well, I feel like I did a lot of these things when I was looking for a home to buy.
You did.
And I'm not a mold technician, FYI. There's only one of us in the room that is.
But you borrow my brain.
But I borrow your brain and I feel like I learnt a lot just going through that process. So first of all, I'd start with just doing a drive-by because I think if it strikes out on that, then don't waste your time going in or going any further. So things to look out for in that regard would be like cracked foundations, broken roof tiles, things kind of like growing out of gutters excessively. Also like standing water or pooled water where it looks like it's just sitting there constantly pooling in an area. Also lack of sunlight, so really take notice of that. And also if it's in a valley or somewhere low-lying or you can look some of these things up without driving by, obviously, like in a flood zone or whatnot. But you can tell pretty easily if, the ground is damp or soggy or it's low-lying. And the chances of it not having an issue with mold or humidity fairly low. I mean, you could still go in and have a look if it is just in a low-lying area, but you're hoping something is a miracle there, but I'd be really cautious if it is.
Yes, I think I saw something come up recently in Ocean Shores that sort of fell in that category. It was an area that had been flooded in February 2022, but they had gutted and renovated the whole thing. So there are exceptions to the rules sometimes, but that's such a smart thing to do. Like look at the address, go for a quick squiz, and if it's looking a bit dodgy, don't bother showing up to the inspection. Yeah. Now, if you do a drive-by and go, okay, there's nothing really obvious externally that's suggesting this is, damp, flood risk, mold risk, the building doesn't look like it's being in a state of disrepair. When you do show up to the inspection, whether this is to rent or to buy, I personally strongly recommend you take a moisture meter.
And I strongly recommend you take Amie Skilton.
I have been asked that before, by the way, but
I did take you to one, I'm pretty sure. The house we're living in now, you came and checked it out once.
Yes. I'm available for occasional
good
in-person visits. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, like once you know these things, especially if you do the course, not to shamelessly plug my course, but that's me in your back pocket. There's like a whole checklist of what to look for so you don't forget, and you can write notes. And in there is an opportunity to write down what you find with a moisture meter. Now, if you've never heard of a moisture meter, it is a little tool that when pressed up against building materials can tell you the moisture content. Now, every material will have what would be considered a normal healthy amount of moisture content. So you do need to make sure it's on the right setting if you're testing, say, timber versus plasterboard versus, concrete. The pinned ones are not very accurate for that. But just for standard sort of building materials, just use it on the right setting. But if you see elevated levels of moisture, that tells you there's water ingress, meaning there's a leak or a burst pipe, or there's like rain coming through, gutters that are overflowing. And there are a couple of key, you can obviously moisture map an entire home if you want. And I have had clients do this in the homes that they currently reside in just to kind of check what's going on. But if you are going to an inspection, the walls external to the bathroom are a really good place, and also in any areas where water's coming in. So laundry, kitchen, bathroom, and also if you suspect, rising damp or water in the walls, or if there's like maybe some obvious signs of leaks in the ceiling. But essentially this tool will tell you if there's elevated levels of moisture, and that will either, if you're renting, just be a red flag to avoid that property. If you're looking to buy, chances are a building and pest should pick that up, but I have seen some pretty woeful building and pest reports as well. So this is just an extra bit of an insurance. And side note, I do have clients who will hire a building biologist to check properties, but that's impractical, particularly for a rental at every property. And this is just going to allow you to screen things. And a little bit like you found this place that was like, I can't find anything. Can someone else have a look? That's when you actually would pull the trigger on something like that.
Yeah. And I guess other things like you could do yourself are things like look up on the internet whether or not there's been any flooding events in that area, or even like in that suburb, where you can even put in the actual address if you wanted to. And, you could also look for things like hurricanes or cyclones or huge storms, just to see whether or not it's something that house or that home has come into contact with once, frequently. And I guess that also is just going to give you, it's not all the picture, but it's like an indication of the context in which it's existed.
Yes, absolutely. I remember I had a client who was looking, again, Ocean Shores. It's a bit of a sketchy suburb, to be honest. But yeah, just Googled the name of the street and flooding. And yeah, there was newspaper articles saying how that road went underwater. So it was like stay on the high side, but not on the low side. Yeah, very smart advice. And also that's another thing you can do before you go to inspection, because if you find something like that and the place hasn't been like knocked down and rebuilt or renovated, it's just not going to be a great option. Another tool you can take with you is a Swiffer cloth. Now, if you're looking to buy, you can usually do like a vacuum ERMI or HERTSMI-2 test. But if you're looking at a rental, a little Swiffer cloth, it's almost just looks like a little bit of tissue. It's probably the best way to describe it.
How sus are you going to look just wiping the walls though?
So here's the plan.
What, is it tongs?
Receipt tongs. I'm telling you now, there's multiple markets for those things.
I know there is. It started here.
So look, my tip would be always go to an inspection with somebody else, and they can run interference with the real estate agent. That's what I've done in the past. One person keeps them talking in a particular room, and the other person runs around with the Swiffer cloth and the moisture meter, just doing some tool checks.
Which role are you playing?
I'm definitely CIA skillsy. Yeah.
I can definitely have a yap.
Yeah, you can definitely have a yap. Yeah, we are available for hire.
Yeah.
So with this, you're basically taking samples, not from dirty areas, but areas where dust is likely accumulated and not been cleaned. So some up high, top of door frames, for example, also skirting boards like inside wardrobes. And essentially it's a DNA PCR test that can show if there are molds in that home that would only be there if there's been water damage. So for me, if I was inspecting a place and I didn't see anything visually that was problematic, moisture meter said everything's dry, I would then go, okay, this is kind of an insurance policy. I'm going to run around and grab some samples and test it. It's not cheap to test though. It's like almost $200 to do HERTSMI-2. So it's really something you'd only do if you're like, there's just no red flags here that I can see, and this is just going to be my one kind of peace of mind thing. And again, how you do that, how many samples you take, where you take them from is inside the course, but the Swiffer cloths are cheap. So let's say you had I remember inspecting properties in Sydney, 300 of them in 7 months. And it was just horrific, like sometimes 5 to 8 a week.
Wow.
And so to be honest, most of them were visually water damaged, but like 5 of them were not. And in that case, let's say you're looking at 5 good ones in a day or in a week, you can take the sample, put it in a Ziploc bag, write the address on it, and then once you've inspected all the ones, then you can just go, oh, this was my favorite. I'm just going to run the test on that one. I'm not going to run them on every single one. So
how long can you keep the sample before you send it off for testing? Like how long is it viable for?
That's a tricky question. I actually don't know. I believe a couple of weeks would be fine.
Yeah, surely because it's like a fungus and they're
it's spores. You're picking up spores, and it's a DNA test, so they're not trying to
culture something.
Yeah. No. So the material will still be present, and in a Ziploc bag, it's not going to be interfered with by light, water, and as long as you're storing it in a cool, dark place, it'll be fine for even a few weeks. So you can absolutely do that, and I think it's a really great tool to have in your back pocket, literally.
Yeah.
Because then you can just go, okay, there's no evidence that there's been a problem here, and you can put your mind at ease.
Signing off, CIA Skiltsy.
Yes.
I love it. Well, the only other one that comes to mind for me is just having a chat to the neighbours, ask about, whether or not they've seen or heard or experienced any flooding or leaks personally. I guess if it's an apartment building, you could also talk to the upstairs, the downstairs around, have they had any water damage, knowing that often, like I can think of an example where my cousin he lives in an apartment and there was a leak in the bathtub upstairs and then all mold in his roof. So you could ask those questions and, I guess you hopefully would get an honest answer, but at least it's something to gather a little bit more information as well.
That's so smart. And if you are buying, obviously you can look at the strata, see if there's been any structural issues or major repairs, and often those things will come up in meeting minutes. But I know one apartment in Coleroy that we lived in, we had a leak, and then when speaking to a neighbour, she was like, oh, yes, I've been trying to fix that roof for the last 15 years. I'm like, oh, great.
That'll do it.
Yeah, probably should ask that before we moved in. But we were it was in the middle of, actually it wasn't COVID. We were in a beautiful apartment in DY, but it got sold and we were kind of in a hurry. And it was okay because it was double brick and it was mostly leaking into the wall cavity downstairs. But yeah, apparently the roof was a problem and everybody in the neighbourhood knew that they were always trying to fix it. It was some tight-ass lawyer who didn't want to actually do it properly.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
What a shame.
What a shame. Yeah, it was a real shame. But anyway, we got out of there. But suffice to say, I've learned so much both in my professional training and then also having moved so often and now having a body that is highly attuned to if the air quality is compromised. But it's heartbreaking. I know clients are often willing to hire a building biologist, and I bloody love them. I recommend them all the time, but it's a lot of money. They're often booked 6 weeks in advance, and even just a rudimentary assessment is probably going to cost you $1,500. You can't do that every time you see a rental you like the look of, and even if you're looking to buy, you want to just go, I've done all of these checks and now there's just a few things I'm actually not trained to do. So these 2 courses, if you are looking for somewhere to live, whether it's to rent or buy, literally it's downloaded my brain. And the nice thing about them is if you apply this information, you're not wasting money getting a building biologist. And you can say to the building biologist, I've already moisture mapped this and I've taken Swiffer samples from here. And you can say, can you check the subfloor roof cavity, do an air sample from the walls, and we're probably good. Let me know anything else you see. So it's a win-win-win. And as I said, it comes with the inspection checklist. And I'll link those. Of course, we'll give our listeners a nice discount code for that. But I'll also pop in the show notes. I've got a webinar freebie to watch on YouTube about red flags of mold as well, which can also just give you a little bit of extra education. But we are voting for mold-free homes for us all, and this is our way of giving back.
Yeah, I love that because you can't heal in an unhealthy environment. So worth it. And please make sure you share it with your friends and your family as well, because I feel like mold affects everyone, even if you've, got a friend or a family member suffering. It sucks. And then if you go to that home, you're exposed as well. So spread the mold in a good way.
Yeah.
Mold awareness.
Mold awareness.
Don't spread actual mold.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Bad.
Oh, well, thank you, friends. Have a mold-free day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.